My name is Alyce King, and my family and I have lived in Beacon Hills for 57 years. Alyce King is currently known as the mayor of the south side of East 29th Street between Paseo and Troost. But that's because I'm the only person currently living on that side of the street between Paseo and Troost. What made my family want to live in the area? I believe it was because another family member was living in the area. I had a cousin who grew up next door to me, and her father was my father's nephew, and that's how we ended up in our neighborhood. What was it like growing up as an African American in my neighborhood? I don't know that I knew any different. Though I lived east of Troost, I went to elementary school west of Troost, which was predominantly white. So I don't know that I knew any different. Now my children, they've also grown up in the same house. And the neighborhood was semi-integrated. There were a few non-African Americans in the neighborhood, so it was an easy life. It wasn't, I don't think we thought about race that much back then. My two different experiences attending school, going from predominantly white elementary school to an all-black high school, was a culture shock for me. I even so much where I remember girls telling me when I walked into the classroom, they thought I was the student teacher, and no one liked me in the beginning because they felt I spoke too properly. But I think having both of those experiences, when I went out into the real world where you work in an environment that is predominantly white, it wasn't hard for me to adjust. It made it easier for me to get along with the people, and not the people, but along with everyone, because I have been in both the worlds. And I guess the new term is code switching. So I knew how to speak with the non-black environment and then speak with the all-black environment, so much so that at one time I had a coworker tell me that they knew that I had just been home to Kansas City because the way that I spoke was different. It's like I hadn't switched back yet, so I think that helped me. What kind of job did I have? When I was in high school, they had a program that they called the Stay in School program, and it allowed you to work half a day and go to school half a day when you were a senior. So from there I went and worked in the government for the Environmental Protection Agency. And from there, when I graduated, I worked part-time for the Federal Energy Administration and went to Penn Valley High School part-time. And I recently retired from the government with 39 years of service. And it was all because of that Stay in School program that got me involved in that work-study program. From a little girl coming off of 29th Street, I didn't envision making the amount of money that I ended up making. It was a surprising and a happy time to hit a financial goal that I don't think I ever strived to hit. I believe, did I pass on a great opportunity? I think I did in high school, but that was because I was a statistic. I was a teenage mother, and I had an opportunity and a scholarship to go off to college. But because I had a child so early, I didn't go. But now that I look back, I think I have strived and made pretty good living for myself, even with those odds against me. The civil rights movement. A brief story is, I remember when Dr. King was killed, and my mother decided to come and get me out of school. My mother didn't drive, so she walked east of Troost to pick me up from Longfellow Elementary School. And I remember seeing these, what I thought were huge white boys at the top of the hill with large chains just swinging them around their heads. Then I remember the next morning at the corner of 29th and Paseo, people running and the tear gas smells, or the effects of it on the newspaper, and how, it caused a reaction. But I don't believe that I really thought much of it until I got older, where there was a woman who went to elementary school with me. She was white, and she found me on Facebook. And what amazed her was because I knew her first, middle, and last name. And yes, I remember you. And she wrote me a letter that told me that she remembered when the tanks were rolling through the neighborhoods. And we finally went back to school, and there were some kids picking on her, and I wrapped my arms around them and said, "Leave her alone, she's my friend." And again, that didn't mean much to me until I got older. So the civil rights, yeah, that was, it's interesting. I don't think you think much of it when you're younger, and it doesn't really hit you and affect you until you're an adult. Yes, I think it takes on a whole different context from when you're a child and you see these things until you hit that certain age where it clicks and you understand what happened and what's going on currently. Gentrification, it has been a learning curve for some of us. For Beacon Hill, for example, even now some of us consider us the north side and the south side of 27th Street, whereas the north side of 27th Street is booming with homes and new developments, whereas some of us on the south side will feel we're being left out of all the good and greatness because we're the legacy. We're the legacies, but we don't feel that we're getting everything that everyone else is getting. It is interesting, back in the day it was a white flight and everyone left the inner city, and now the flight has returned. And when I lived in Colorado for 12 years, and my sons lived in the same house, so I came back frequently. And one of the times, it's like I was surprised at the racial makeup had changed so much. Like, where are these people coming from? But we are all welcoming, at least on my block. We have a new couple that moved in, and we have embraced the new couple. They are invited to block parties. We're speaking. So I don't know that gentrification has been a bad thing, but it has been different. believe it's what makes Beacon Hill special. I think it's the sense of neighborhood, the people, the village, and it does take a village, and I've had that village around me all my life, and my children have had that village to the point where if I was looking for my children when they were younger, a neighbor around the corner, I could see his back porch, and he would yell across a lot saying, "Alyce, the kids are at this neighbor's home. Do you want me to get them?" "No, I'll call. Neighbor, or my kids in your backyard, send them home." And it has continued to this day. Right now, there aren't very many major institutions. Once upon a time, there was the Hostess Bakery, which is currently the Lofts now. That was wonderful back when I was younger, to wake up to the smell of baking bread. We had several grocery stores. Right on between 29th and 28th and Troost was a Safeway. Up on further south on Troost, there were shops, J.C. Penney's, Montgomery Ward's, shoe stores. J.C. Penney's was housed what is in currently Operation Breakthrough. And then across the street was a Montgomery Ward's. We called it, in my neighborhood, we called it Uptown. We were going shopping uptown, not downtown, but uptown, you know, with the movie theater, the ISIS, on 27th and Troost, there was a roller skating rink, Rhythm Lanes, which was, all the kids were at Rhythm Lane all the time. So unfortunately, I think the major one preserved is the Hostess Bakery, which has been converted into Lofts, which is next to the school district. There are not a lot of other buildings, big buildings, still standing. Friends that I want to talk about in Beacon Hill. Well, let's see. There was a Charles Herndon who actually had a barbecue shop or store right here in the park where the Charlie Parker Head is, right in that area. He had his own barbecue restaurant. I grew up with and still spend time with the Haywood family, and their father, Nick Haywood, was a boxer in the city. And if you go a couple of blocks down right off of Paseo, I think that's Flora, you'll see that it says Nick Haywood Way. They named a street after him because he used to box over here at Gregg Center and had his own little boxing group of young men. Let's see, who else can we talk about? There was Miss Ruby Session, who was part of Beacon Hill, and she and Miss Claudia were friends. So those are, you know, a few aside from the same good friends that I have right now. In my neighborhood, our social life is, back then, is currently what it is now. Believe it or not, some of the same people, the majority of the people that I grew up with either live in their parents' home or they come back and visit the neighborhood regularly. So the friend that I had at age 4 is currently living in the home of her parents. And as I walk my dog through the neighborhood, and I can walk around the corner, and there are several people that I grew up with are still there. We socialize on the regular. my kids and their kids were friends, are friends, and now our grandchildren are friends. So we have what I like to call a Leave It to Beaver neighborhood, if you understand that context, whereas they can come into my home and say, I need to borrow that cake pan, and I just point to the kitchen and they know where to go, whereas I can do the same at their home, and we're welcomed in each other's homes and we hang out all the time.